Hi there. Hi there. I'm Edie Ekman. Bianca, were you going to say something about the project, or did you want me to just go ahead and start talking?
Sure, Edie, if you want to take it away.
Okay, so we are working on Crochet Colorwork today. The project is something that you saw linked in your class page. It's for some beautiful colorwork hats. And the pattern is in 3 sizes. I'm not going to actually be making the hats today, but I'm going to be showing you some of the color work. But I will show you these close-ups of the hats.
Oh, hold on. We can't hear you, Edie. Hold on, Edie. We can't hear you. I think she disconnected her audio. 1 second. Hold on. Hold on. I think what happened was her front view camera, which had her audio, dropped off. And now her overview camera doesn't have it. Hold on 1 second. I'm not sure if you can see me. Edie. Can you see us? No, maybe not. Let me see if I can try to spotlight. Edie, we can't hear you. Wait, maybe if I have, hold on. Oh, where's a Sharpie when you need one? I can't really see that. We can't hear you. Sorry, everybody. We're working on it. Hold on, let me. Oh, might have her back.
Okay, and can you hear me now?
Oh, we can hear you now.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know what was wrong.
I think your front. I think your front-facing camera accidentally dropped out of the meeting, and that's the one that had your audio.
Okay. I am terribly sorry, but that's okay. I can do this in 5 minutes shorter than I had planned. How about that? Okay. So let me go back to what I was saying before so you can actually see the pictures. So we're going to be doing this hat, but I'm going to be working, to start with, I'm going to be working in rounds where I'm not turning. So I'm going just round and round and round rather than back and forth the way the pattern says. Because there's so much color work going on here, it's pretty tricky to see how to do it. So let me show you these tricks that I like to use. Here I have this foundation single crochet, and I'm going to join like I'm making a tiny, tiny little hat. All right, so I have marked the last stitch I made and the first stitch I made. And I'm going to slip stitch in this first stitch. The reason that I like to do 2 markers instead of just 1 marker is because sometimes I think that slip stitch looks like a stitch, and I start working into it, and then I start changing the number of stitches, and that can really get confusing. So I don't want to do that. So this way, I know that that stitch in between my markers is just my slip stitch, and I'm never going to work into that stitch. So the instructions tell me to start working according to the chart. Now I've added some extra numbers to my chart here, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes when I start working back and forth. If you haven't read a stitch chart before, generally speaking, you read in the direction you're working. So I'm right-handed. I'm going to start down here with row 1, and I will read all the rounds, all the round 1 rounds from right to left. If you're left-handed, you're going to reverse that. You'll be working in this direction. So your 1 would be over here, and you'd be working in this direction. I'll be working a 4-stitch repeat. So if I look at this chart, just right down here on the first row that I would be working. Raina, can you hear me? You were holding up a piece of paper again. You're good. Okay. I have 3 gray stitches and 1 red stitch. So it's going to be 3 gray, 1 red, 3 gray, 1 red. But there's something else I need to tell you about stitches, about changing color first. This may be something that you already know, but let's start with my chain 1, and I'm not going to turn. I'm just going to do this as round 1. I'm going to work into that first stitch. That's a gray stitch. And I'm going to go ahead and move that marker up. So I know that's the first stitch of my round. Okay, so I have 3 gray stitches. That was 1. Here's 2. Here's 3. Now, if I finish that gray stitch like this and pick up and start working my red, we're going to have a bit of a problem, because what's going to happen here, if I do a red stitch, watch what's going to happen with that gray stitch, that gray loop. It's going to jump over and get in the way of my red stitch. Do you see that? That looks really messy. I don't want that to happen. To keep that from happening, I have to go back, and before I finish that last stitch, when I know that my next stitch is going to be a different color, I have to change color. So I go in, yarn over, pull up a loop, and I stop right there before I finish that single crochet. And I say, okay, my next stitch is going to be red. So I need to go ahead, yarn over with the red, and pull through both to finish that stitch, which makes a nice clean color change. Now I can do my next red stitch. Remember, it was 3 grays, 1 red. So here I am. I'm going to do a red stitch, but guess what? If I do that red stitch and finish it, that red's going to jump over to the green. This is only 1 red stitch. Let me back up. I have to stop my red there and change to gray to finish it, to get a nice clean color change. So I'm going to be doing that lots and lots, but I wanted to make sure you understood why I'm going to be changing colors when I do. Okay, so if I'm doing 3 grays, 1 red, 3 grays, 1 red all the way around, that's great. But what am I going to do with the yarn that I'm not using at the time? Like, what am I going to do with the red yarn while I'm working with the gray yarn? There are a couple of different ways that you can deal with that when you're doing this kind of stranded color work. But the instructions tell me to enclose the red yarn around the gray yarn. And you may be sort of familiar with this from when you weave in ends. Let me see if I can get a little more light on here. I'm going to reach over here and see if I can get a little more. I don't know if that's going to help any. Let's see. All right, so I'm going to do my gray stitch, but I'm going to work around that red stitch. Do you see the red yarn is just enclosed there? I'm going to yarn over, pull up a loop, and yarn over and pull through. There's my gray stitch, but I'm carrying that red yarn down here at the base, but on the wrong side. I'm keeping it around to the back. All right, here I've done 1, 2, I'm going to do 3, but what do I need to do here? I need to change colors. So I'm going to do my yarn over with my red, do my next red stitch. And in this case, I can put the gray yarn at the base of the stitch if I want to. Yarn over, pull up a loop, whoops, but I need to switch to the gray. So I'm doing that all the way around. I'm going to do gray, 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 switch to red, 1 red, switch to gray, then gray. See me carrying that red yarn. I'm going to do that all the way around. Whoops. And I found myself, when I was practicing, I found myself doing that a lot. I forgot to switch. So you do kind of have to pay attention. This is not a project for beginners at all. I had to practice this weekend before. What did I do on my Memorial Day weekend? I practiced making a colorwork hat. So I'm going to work around to here. I'm sorry, there's no way to do it faster, but look ahead while I'm working on this and see if you can tell what the next thing I'm going to do. The next row, the next round, I should say, is going to be different. It's still 3 grays and a red, but it's in a different, the stitches are in a different place. So here I come. And I have not been paying attention. You notice my yarns are twisting. If I were really paying attention, I could have been careful and kept them from twisting, but I'll show you how I'm going to deal with that in a minute. I'm just going to pull some extra out here. All right. Red, changing to gray. Gray, 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 changing to red. When I get around to the end, I need to make sure that my last stitch is where I expect it to be. So I expect to be ending with a red stitch. If I'm not ending with a red stitch in pattern, then I know I've done something wrong, which is why I also like to have that marker in that last stitch. So this looks okay because there's my last stitch. It needs to be red. And I'm going to change to gray. And because that's my last stitch, I'm going to take the marker out and put it in my last stitch. And then do my slip stitch. And it's easy to know which one to slip stitch into because there's a marker in it. All right, so there's my first round. You see the little blips of red color in there. The next row is gray, red, gray, gray. So it's still 3 grays and a red, but my red's popping up in a different place. So when I do that, I'm just going to pull some extra yarn out here. I don't care that it's tangled. I'm going to, again, know where my red is, know where my gray is. My chain 1, gray in that first stitch. So it's the same stitch where I joined, and I'm going to put the marker in that same stitch as I finish. And then now I need a red. So what did I do wrong here? That's a gray stitch that was immediately changing to red. So I have to say to myself, whoops, I completed a gray stitch. That's not what I meant to do. I need to back out one step because the next step, the next stitch needs to be red. So I'm going to pull my red up here. So even the very first stitch of that round, even though it was meant to be gray, I needed to change to red at the end of that first stitch. So this stitch is red, changing to gray, then again, wrapping around the red, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to stop here because hopefully you get the idea. And I want to show you what the wrong side looks like. Because I was carrying the red behind the other stitches or behind the stitch, it's buried. There are no floats along here. If I had not been carrying it, there would have been a float. There would have been a long strand here. And your fingers might get caught in it or something, or it might be hard to keep the color, keep the tension correct. But when you're enclosing the yarn like that, let me show you again what we're doing. When you're enclosing the yarn, that kind of helps with that tension. So I needed to change that stitch to red. My pattern's trying to jump into the camera here. Pull up the gray. And then work around that strand like that, but always keeping it to the back. So let me move to a sample that I've worked a little bit more so you can see what this looks like. Here, I've been doing that all the way around. There's the little blips of color that we did at the beginning. Remember the red, I'm sorry it doesn't show up any better. And then I changed to white on round, what was that, round 4. So I was only working with 2 colors at a time. If you notice on these charts, you only have 2 colors at a time. Round 4 has red and white. Round 6 has red and white. Round 7 has white and gray. So you're only carrying 2 colors. You never have more than 2 colors. So that's kind of a traditional, in knitting, that would be a traditional Fair Isle design that you only have 2 colors, but you might change what those colors are pretty frequently. So one thing you'll notice about this, though, is it's not quite on top of each other. Do you see how in the chart you've got stitches that are like the stitches are very vertical. You see that they're really straight up and down on top of each other. When I work in the round, though, stitches don't sit exactly on top of each other. They sit off, because I'm right-handed, they sit off to the right a little bit. And so while this is still really pretty, I think it doesn't look quite like you expect the chart to look, expect it to look like from the chart. Right? You expect it to be a little bit more, I don't know, straight up and down, would you say? So the designer wanted you then to work back and forth to sort of mitigate that thing where it's not straight up and down. So when you work back and forth on something like this, that means all the stitches aren't going to be right side stitches. Can you see that these are all right side stitches? They're all very smooth. Here's what the wrong side of that pattern looks like. You can see my ends I didn't weave in, but I carried those yarns enclosed in the, catching them behind. So what happens then if we're working back and forth? It gets a lot more complicated. Let me back up to where I was over here. So let's say I worked round 1 as a right side row and I joined. Okay, so oops, I've got to put my marker back in this first stitch. All right, so I joined, but now I need to turn. By turning, I'm turning like this, and now I'm basically working with the wrong side facing me. I'm actually going to flip it wrong side out so that you can see what's going on. So now I have, let's call it the ugly side, right? The wrong side is facing me. As a matter of fact, I'm going to come back over here and grab another marker, because another thing I found, I want to make sure that I really, really do know which is the right side and which is the wrong side while I'm working on it. So I'm going to put a big old marker here on the right side so that I actually can keep track of where I am. All right. So here we are, we're ready to work row 2 or round 2, but now I have to work round 2 going in the other direction. I have to read round 2 going in the other direction, right? So round 1 was right side rows. These are all right side rows. Round 2 is a wrong side row. So now I have to remember to read the chart from left to right, or if you're left-handed, you're going to read it from right to left. So now it's like a little bit of mental gymnastics. We have to start thinking, okay, what does it say? What does round 2 say? If I'm reading from left to right, it says I have 2 grays, a red, and a gray. Is everybody with me on that? Can I see some smiling, some nodding faces or something? I'm looking at everybody. I'm just talking into the void here. I don't know if you're hearing me or if I'm making any sense at all. And since I started talking and nobody could hear me, I just want to make sure you're really with me, right?
We can hear you. You're
Okay.
good.
But are you understanding? You know, that's the thing.
You'll have to ask them about that.
Are you getting me? Okay. So I did my turn and I have my chain 1, but now I've got to go back in this direction, which is why I'm really happy I have a marker there, because that first stitch is that red stitch there. You see it? And that makes sense because I need to put a gray stitch over a red stitch. So I'm going to work the first stitch right in there where the marked stitch is, and I'm going to keep it gray. I'm going to take this marker out and replace it. The pattern does not tell you to do this with markers. I'm telling you to do this with markers because this is how I keep from going crazy when I work something back and forth in rounds, and I don't want you to go crazy. Okay, so that was one gray stitch. I need to do another gray stitch and then change it to red, but oh my gosh, I also have to remember to keep that red strand enclosed. Remember, we were enclosing the red strand? But oh my gosh, I need to remember to keep it closer to the wrong side. Remember when I was doing it on the right side and I was kind of holding it to the back a little bit? Well, now I want to hold it to the front a little bit, but I also want to enclose it. So here we go. There's the red that I'm going to want to carry along with me. I'm going to put it over my hook and then go into that next gray stitch, yarn over, pull it all the way through. So I'm enclosing that red, and then yarn over and pull through too, but this one needs to change to red. All right, let me back up because I see a lot of puzzle faces and I sure don't blame you. Like I say, I had to practice this a lot.
So we did have a few questions.
Okay.
So when you work in the round, does it spiral like it does in knitting?
It does. It can spiral. So let me go back to this one where I was working in the round. I was not spiraling it. I was joining at the end of rounds. So if I had chosen not to do the slip stitch chain 1, it would have been a spiral. But because I did a slip stitch and chain 1, I was joining rounds and making a very strong distinction between where the rounds are. And you can see that it's not really spiraling. They're really stacking up here. So you can do it either way. That's a good question. But what we're doing is not spirals, it's joined rounds.
Okay. And we do have someone, they said, so they're wondering, so what you're doing in essence, working it as you would flat? Is that correct?
Yes, it's worked as I would. So right now what I'm doing is working as I would flat, but I'm actually joining it at the end of the round and then turning and going the other direction. So I'm just putting a slip stitch between the ends. Like if I were working back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, but instead of just turning, I'm connecting it to the other side.
Okay.
Okay. So and the reason I'm doing it this way is because if you want to make this hat, this is the technique they use. I'll be honest with you, it's not the way I would have done it. Okay. I'll just tell you, if I were making this hat, I don't get in trouble for saying this, but if I were making this hat, I would use this technique, same pattern. I just wouldn't turn at the end of rows because I think this is easier by a lot. But I showed you how to do that, so you know how to do that. And now I'm showing you the harder way, but it's what's in the pattern.
Okay. And so are you skipping the ribbing?
Yes. Yes. So this is about color work. This class is about color work. So the ribbing was worked first and joined, and then you pick up and crochet around and then start the color work. And since this class is about crochet color work, I'm just showing you the color work section.
Yep.
Okay.
Gotcha. And
any other questions before I get going?
When are you doing the slip stitch when finishing a round?
All right, so let me back up to this slip.
You're right there.
right here. So let me take this marker out. So when I finished, take that out here. All right, here I was on a right side round. That was round 1. And I finished the round, right? I did my last stitch. I'm putting a slip stitch in the first stitch. I put a marker in that stitch so that I can find it. And I put a slip stitch to join the round. And that is the end of round 1. Then to begin round 2, I'm going to turn. There's my wrong side, and I'm actually turning it inside out so that you can see it. And chain 1. But now my first stitch is this red stitch. If you look at the chart, you can see the first stitch of round 2, the one on the left, is a gray stitch that goes on top of a red stitch. So here, I need to put a gray stitch in that first red stitch. So here I'm doing my single crochet into the red stitch, but the next stitch, the next stitch after that is also gray. So that's all right. I'm going to finish that gray stitch. And because I like to put a marker in it so I can find it later, I'm going to do that. The next stitch is also a gray stitch. I'm going to go ahead and do that gray stitch. But I need to change it to red on the last step of the stitch. To do that, well, here's the red I need. It's in front. But I need to be able to do that. But I also need to take this gray. You see how the gray is in back? That means it's on the right side of the fabric. I need to bring the gray yarn to the wrong side or to the front. Then I need to do a yarn over with the red and pull through to change color. That's me changing color before I do my next red stitch. I know it's confusing, right? I'm going to explain it a bunch more times, so maybe it'll click in at some point. So the third stitch of round 2, working from left to right, is a red stitch. So I'm going to go into this next stitch, do my single crochet, but you know what? It's just a single red stitch, right? It's just one hanging out there by itself. So I need to change colors again. Excuse me. I'm going to bring the yarn to the wrong side or to the front. Then I'm going to take this gray yarn and do my yarn over and change that to gray. Now I need to do 3 gray stitches. Excuse me. But I also need to carry this red yarn along with the on the wrong side, which is right now the front. So I'm going to do 3 gray stitches. There's 1, 2, 3. Oops. This one needs to change to red at the last minute. So I'm going to bring the gray forward, do the yarn over with the red, do 1 red stitch. Oh, but it has to change to gray. So I'm going to bring the yarn forward, change it to gray. I'm going to do 3 more gray stitches, catching that red yarn. Now, excuse me, I don't want to let that red yarn slip to the front, because to the back, because that's the right side. I need to kind of keep it here closer to me. 1, 2, 3. Move the gray yarn forward, do the yarn over with the red to change that stitch to red, so you have that nice clean color change. Red, bring the yarn forward, change it to gray. Then we want to carry this red yarn, 1, 2, 3. Time to change again. Bring the gray yarn back, forward, I should say. Change to red. Bring the red yarn forward. Change to gray, 1. Remember to carry this through. 2. Oh, sorry, that's 1, 2. Here we are changing color again. 3, make that one red, change color again. So it's just a little blip of red. When I get back around, I'm going to join with a slip stitch again. So let me just go kind of sort of fast. I can't really go fast. It's not one of those fast projects. Oops. See, when I stop thinking about it, I forget to change color. So when I finish this round, I should end with a red and then a gray. So that tells me if I've been following my stitch pattern correctly. You know what you're planning to end with. So come around here, gray. I'm going to show you what I do about getting this yarn tangled when I'm not paying attention, as I have not been paying attention. So gray, 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 and then I said red and gray. So yay, I didn't make a mistake. It's coming where I want it to be. There's my red. And then there's my gray in the last marked stitch. You see, I have 1 more stitch. And there's my marked stitch. I'm going to finish that stitch, move my marker so I don't lose track. And then join with a slip stitch. I need to join that round with a slip stitch. There's my first stitch. All that stuff in between is the slip stitch that I had before. So I'm going to join with a slip stitch here. And that tells me that I have finished round 2, which was a wrong side round. So now I need to turn my work. I'm going to flip it right side out and take a look at it because it's going to look a little different. You see how on round 1, we had these kind of nice V's, these little, just little blips of color. But when you're looking at the wrong side, you don't have quite as clean a color distinction. And I'm going to show it to you on the hat because I think you can see it a little bit better on this yellow hat. It's not as tidy because you're looking at both the right side and the wrong side of the stitches. So when you're looking at these, hopefully you can understand that this is not red, it's yellow, but you see how they're not, there's a nice little tidy yellow stitch right there and there. But when you're looking at the wrong side of stitches, they're just not as well defined. Okay, so the difference that you get when you're working back and forth versus in the round, versus when you're working back and forth in rounds versus working in rounds where you don't turn is this. This is the one where all the stitches are right side. They angle off a little bit to the right. Here, they may be a little straighter, but you don't get as well-defined edges. So you can decide which you prefer. Since I'm talking about crochet color work, not 100% this particular pattern, you can understand the difference between what it's going to look like with this kind of Fair Isle pattern, that you've got a choice to make between those two. The other difference is going to be, these are a little more, the ones where I was working without turning, they all look more the same, whereas when you're working in joined rounds, you get more of this, it looks like back and forth, right? This is what back and forth single crochet looks like if you weren't joining. So you get something that looks more like that than you would if you were working something that was in spiral rounds or just right side rounds the whole way. So those are two options that you have for this particular pattern. What I discovered when I was, as I say, I really had to practice this. I made quite a few swatches because I didn't find it easy. What I discovered, I'm going to go ahead and let me go ahead and skip to where I was up here on this particular one. So this is working back and forth in joined rounds. So what I was just doing, but I'm a little further along. Can you see that? So here I am, I fastened on, I didn't fasten off, I just joined with a slip stitch, and I can tell that I joined with a slip stitch after finishing a wrong side row. I know that because I can see where my slip stitch joined right here. So I'm going to turn, and I've got to figure out where I left off, because this is about color work. And sometimes we don't always mark where we were, right? Does the phone ever ring and you have to figure out where you left off, or you just forgot to mark your pattern or whatever? That's okay, because we can totally read our crochet. Because who wants to be a slave to a pattern? I want to be able to look at my work and see where I am. I don't want to have to remember to make little marks or use a row counter, which I always lose, or heaven forbid that, do you know the M&M method? I may have mentioned this on the class before. The M&M method, where you put M&Ms in a bowl and say you have 12 rows to do, and each time you finish a row, you eat an M&M, and when the M&Ms are gone, you finished all your 12 rows. That doesn't work for me, because at the end of the first row, all my M&Ms are gone. So that doesn't work for me at all. What does work for me is being able to read my work. So what I'm going to do here is say, well, let's see, the last round I did was a wrong side round. I can tell that because I can look at the stitches and see that those stitches are right side stitch or right, that's the right side of the single crochet. That's the wrong side of the single crochet. I can also see that that round was 1, 2, 3 grays, 1 white, 3 grays, 1 white in some order, but maybe not, maybe it wasn't 3 and 1, maybe it was 1 gray, 1 white, 2 grays or something. But let's see what pattern, what that looks like here. Well, I've clearly done all the red, and then it looks like I did 2 rows of the white right above it. And it looks like round 9 would be a right side round. How do I know it's a right side round? Because the number is on the right side. So that tells me I'm going to be working in this direction because I'm right-handed. Left-handers, I'm sorry, patterns are written for right-handers. So I know that I'm on round 9, and I did that with just a quick glance at the chart and at my work. So now I know I'm on round 9, and I can just pick up where I left off. Round 9 is going to seem pretty easy because it's a right side round, and I don't have to worry about all that bringing the yarn forward and back, because it's pretty much going to stay in the back or the wrong side the whole time. So I'm going to do my chain 1, and round 9 looks like it's 3 grays and a red. By the way, this pattern uses 2 different grays. I'm only using 1 gray, but I think that's color D. If you look really carefully, it's a darker gray. So where does my first stitch go? My first stitch goes right there in that marked stitch. Yay for markers. I'm going to move the marker. And what I did on this one is I actually used 2 different color markers so that I can remember when I'm starting the pink row, that's a right side row. I just like to be able to remember that. Move my marker. 1, oops, and I need to carry, ooh, this is carrying red. So I said that I was only using 1 color at a time. I actually have 3 colors attached, but I'm not using the white at all on this round. I'm only using gray and red. So that was 1, and I need to carry that red yarn behind. So I'm going to pull it up here. 2, 3, and what do I need to do next? Change color before I finish. I have 1 red stitch. I'm going to go in. That's my red stitch. I need to finish it with gray. And then I have 3 reds. And notice that I'm carrying my yarn behind. 2, 3. There we go. So right side rows start to get a little bit easier. It's the wrong side rows that I find really, really fiddly. Another thing I wanted to show you here, I'm not all that tangled, and if I'm paying attention, I can avoid getting my yarns tangled, but I tend to get into a rhythm and forget to pay attention to my yarns. So I end up getting a big old mess. Like, well, that's not too much of a mess, but let's pretend that's a big old mess and they're all tangled up. Well, I almost never work from a ginormous ball. Like, this is too much yarn for me to hang on to, especially if I'm doing a bunch of different colors. What I do instead, I might leave my main color in the big ball, but what I do instead is I wind smaller balls. So I will just take, here's some white, and when I'm ready to use the white, I will just wind off a bunch of yards. Often in a center pull ball. I'm not doing a center pull ball right now, but I do have a video about how to do that because I like to use center pull balls. and I'll just pull off. And that way I just have a smaller amount to use. So it's not like an Intarsia butterfly or something like that in that kind of color work. It's just a few links that are shorter. And that way, if I do get tangled, I can just kind of pull, either this small ball or just a shorter length through and keep those tangles from really getting in the way. I'd rather weave in a couple of ends, a couple of extra ends, than have a whole big mess of tangled yarn that I have to figure out. So I'm going to stop talking for a moment, take a breath, take a drink, and see if there's some questions that I need to answer or where I need to go back over something.
So we did have someone ask that they were wondering about the process for untangling, they're keeping the yarn from tangling, and if it was similar to how for crochet, knitting.
Yes, it is similar to
crochet.
knitting. So when you are, especially when you're working back and forth, sometimes it tangles in one direction, then it untangles in the other, if you're careful to move it the same way each time. I found when I was working on these, I just had to be really careful every now and then to, instead of just keeping going, which is what I've been doing here, I've just sort of been picking it up without paying attention to it. I was paying a bit more attention when I was bringing the yarn up to keep them. They might cross over once, but I made sure they crossed in the other direction the next time to keep it from tangling. I just find it hard to talk and demonstrate and demonstrate all the things all at once on Zoom. So I was not paying that much attention, but honestly, sometimes I get watching TV or something and I don't pay attention. I'm just like, okay, it's something I have to deal with. Mm-hmm. It's just part of it.
Okay. And how are you carrying the white?
So the white, okay, so on this round 9, let me get these out of the way. Round 9, I'm not carrying the white at all. It's just hanging out here because I'm not using it at all. So I'm only carrying the 2 yarns that I'm using on that row, and the other yarns are just, this white's just hanging out. So if I show you the other side, I actually carried that. Can you see where I carried the red from here up to here? I carried the gray from here to here. I probably shouldn't have. I probably should have cut it there, but I'm only carrying it up when I'm not using it. I'm not carrying it around. In other words, I don't want to carry anything I don't need this round. That was a good question. Here, yeah, here's where my tangle.
That's a good segue, because somebody asked in the pattern, does break A, B, and C mean cut?
Yes. Okay. Yes, it means cut. Yes. Yep. And I wasn't actually reading the pattern itself. I was reading the chart. So yeah, you probably want to cut those yarns after you finish whatever rounds you're working with. Was there another question? There were a couple other things I wanted to say about color work.
Nope, that looks like we're all cut up. So
the kind of color work we're doing here is not all the kinds of color work that you can do in crochet, right? We only had an hour. We had this one project, whatever. So this is stranded color work, or in knitting, it would be called Fair Isle, because it's this type of pattern is where you're carrying the yarn. Excuse me, when you're carrying the yarn, you're using 2 colors in a row. Sometimes you use more than 2 colors in a row. I keep saying row, but these are rounds, but it doesn't matter whether you're working in rounds or back and forth. You can also have a kind of color work called Intarsia. And Intarsia color work is not where you carry the yarn and use, 2 or 3 in a row. It's where you have blocks of color. So if you think of maybe a checkerboard where you have like red or black and white and black, and each of those little sections would be its own ball of yarn or its own little length of yarn. So you wouldn't carry the black yarn behind the white yarn to get to the next black yarn. You would just use separate balls of yarn. And if you think of picture crochet, or if you do corner to corner, have you ever done corner to corner where you have pictures? That's a type of Intarsia, because you're carrying, say, your background color, and then you have, I don't know, a teddy bear color, and then you have another ball of background color. that kind of crochet is called Intarsia crochet, and there's also Intarsia knitting. So there's a special kind of stranded crochet called tapestry crochet, and that is more like what we've been doing here. In tapestry crochet, you're always working with the right side facing, and you're always carrying that extra color. You're enclosing that extra color. You could choose, now not in tapestry, but in stranded crochet, you could also choose not to enclose that color that's being not used in, it's being used on this round, but not in this particular stitch. I could have had floats across here. So it's not being, the color in use is not being, sorry, the color not in use is not being enclosed. It's just being carried or floated across the back. So those are all different types of color work that you can do in crochet. We just happen to choose a particularly challenging one. You can also do stripes, you know, yay stripes, yay ripple stitch, which is a special kind of stripe. So there are all kinds of really cool color work patterns you can do. But I like doing, you know, if you're looking for a little bit more of a challenge and you're a little bit more of an advanced crocheter, doing color work like this can really be cool, because really, who doesn't want to wear a cute hat? You know, that's a pretty, I don't know, it's stuck together. I can't show you the other side. Those are pretty cute hats. All right, any other questions? I feel like this was a hard one, and there was a lot to explain in just an hour.
Yeah, we have one question from Sasha who says, do you weave in the yarn later or as you go on?
A great question. So you can certainly weave it in as you go, except you probably don't want to weave over two ends. You know how is carrying one strand, you probably don't want to have two strands. I will tell you what I do, and that is I almost never weave in my ends as I go. I might weave them in for a couple of rows or a couple of stitches, but I always leave a yarn tail, and I always weave in my ends in multiple directions. So personally, I never think it's enough just to catch your ends along a row, I think, or along a round. I think that is not sufficient. Those ends are going to pop out. So I always take a yarn needle and weave in a couple of directions, like down this way and down this way. I like to weave in ends because it means I'm almost through with my project. So I don't think it's a chore at all. And I hate to have the ends pop out. So that's what I do.
I think that was our last question for now, unless anybody has anything else.
Really?
Yeah. 5 minutes to spare.
5 minutes to spare. All right. Well, ask me some more questions. I got 5 more minutes. I thought it was going to be hard, or I have stunned everybody. Maybe I stunned everybody.
They did say that they really enjoyed and appreciated, you know, you showing them how to work the pattern your way.
Right. So yeah, don't get me in trouble with Yarnspirations or Michael for saying I didn't do the pattern. I don't do the pattern the way it says. And I'll speak as a designer. Sometimes people will say, I made your such and such, but I did it in blue instead of gold. I'm like, awesome. You know, like, as a matter of fact, I probably like it better in gold than in blue. Let me see, you know, like there's no pattern police, and nobody's going to come along and, you know, tell you did it wrong. And if they do, they're wrong, because there's no such thing as wrong in crochet.
There you go. Angie wants to know how long you've been crocheting.
Well, since I was about 6. So there's some math involved there, and I'd have to carry something, and it's a lot of decades. A lot of decades. So yeah, if you've just started, you're not going to be quite as fast as I am. And I took a break for a few decades too, like, you know.
Yeah. And so someone's wondering if they have kind of a larger head, but maybe they don't want their hat to be as tall.
Okay.
How do they adjust the pattern to fit that?
Okay, so let me pull these three sizes. I happen to have all 3 sizes. So this looks like this is the small, and what do they call this? Child, small adult, medium adult. This looks like a pretty big hat. All of these are the same, all of the color patterns, it looks like, are the same height, right? So if you look at the chart, you can see that they're all 17 rounds tall. So that part is going to be the same on all of them. But what you do below it and what you do above it is going to take care of the distance of the height, right? So if you notice that you can make the ribbing a different width, right? Different length, but it's actually the width. Or you could do more rows or fewer rows on the top before you start your shaping. But what's going to happen is that this color work band is going to be the same height for any of the sizes. But that's going to be, that's not that much. I mean, you just start shaping sooner. So I would encourage you definitely to do a gauge swatch for a couple of reasons. So these that I was doing could be considered gauge swatches. Like I say, I had to practice this. This took me a little bit of practice. So I would want to be practicing on a smaller piece like this. Plus, I mean, isn't some American Girl doll going to love this hat when it's a hat? Because all I have to do is do a couple more rounds and put a little pom-pom on it and stick it on her head and she'll be happy. I don't think I have any American Girl dolls at my house, but somebody does, I'm sure. So you can just do your gauge swatch, get used to what this stitch pattern feels like before you make the hat, and you'll have an idea of what your row gauge is going to be. And if you need to maybe leave off, I don't know, I guess you could leave off rounds 1 and 17 if you needed to make it shorter. It would be hard to leave off rounds 2 through 16. It would be hard to make that part shorter. Hope that answered kind of a tricky question to answer.
Yeah, and so I just had it. Where did it go? Can you make this pattern into a sweater or a blanket?
Sure. It would maybe be easier as a well, I don't know about easier, because if a blanket, you're going to be working back and forth, right? So you're still going to have, you're going to have a right side and a wrong side showing. So the wrong side of the blanket would look, you know, something like this. Or you can make I mean, you can take a chart and make it into anything. So that's the wonderful thing about color work. You can use a chart like this. You could make mittens, you could make hats, you could make scarves, blankets, anything from this chart. That's what stitch dictionaries are all about. They're entire books of nothing but charts for you to make into anything you want. And usually you can find them as knit stitch dictionaries, but there's no reason crocheters can't use those color work patterns that are meant for knitters in their crocheting.
Awesome. And what is the difference between floating and enclosing the yarn you're carrying?
All right, so what we've been doing this whole time is enclosing it so that you don't have any of those floats. But if I wanted to float it, I'm just going to go back to this one here, and I'm going to just make it up as I go here. So let's say I was doing 1, 2, 3, and let's say it's time for me to do a white one. And I'm going to do white here. Here, I didn't enclose it. I let it float. So I've got that long strand coming across the back. And that's okay too, but you really don't want that on mittens or something, because your fingers are just going to catch right in that. Or a sweater, you know, can you imagine a sweater with floats down in the cuff and you try to stick your arm down it and it gets all stuck on your fingers? So, yeah. Yep. Okay. Anything else? And I apologize. I apologize for the sound and I don't know what happened there, but
hey, we got it figured out.
Yeah,
it's all good in the end. No, I think we're all done with our questions. Everyone says thank you. It was a great class, very informative.
Thank you. Hope I'll see you again sometime. And visit me at edieekman.com.
All right. And for anyone who does post your work on social media after today's class, please be sure to hashtag Make It With Michaels and hashtag Michaels Classes, as well as at Edie Ekman, at Your Inspirations and hashtag Your Inspirations. Thanks
Good
for
luck.
coming. Bye.
Bye.